Friends, thank you for listening to this message. I really want every single member of the church family to take the time to do so. Now, over the past 15 months or so, of course, we have been largely separated from each other, even over the past few weeks when we've been able to gather together. The whole experience has been distinctly unchurch-like. And we're now beginning another new phase of this pandemic, which we as a church need to adjust to again. We're allowed to sing once more. We can take our masks off. We don't have to socially distance from each other. And yet, it's really clear, isn't it, that the pandemic is far from over. Now, many of us will be looking forward to the day when we can gather and sing and worship, and we've not been able to do that since March 2020, whilst others will be feeling nervous and vulnerable and unsure. And I want to just say thank you to those of you who have been in touch with me to share those. So how do we decide what is the right thing for us to do here at St. Mary's? Well, thankfully, we have the scriptures to guide us. And I've been drawn to a number of those over the last few days and weeks. And the first one of those is from 1 Corinthians 12, verse 6, where St. Paul is obviously asked a question that says, well, everything is permissible. And he responds by saying, but not everything is beneficial. And so the first thing that I've been reminding myself of is that just because we can do things doesn't mean to say that we will. Then I've been reminded of the exhortation in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, for Christians to keep gathering together, because some of them had got into the habit of not doing that. Now, the context there was persecution, and perhaps understandably, some of them had decided to stay at home because it was much safer. But the writer urges them not to do that, but to gather together. Such is its importance in the life of Christian community, to do that even with all the associated risks. And I'm reminded again that St. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 11, says that despite as Christians we have these freedoms, gospel freedoms, sometimes it is a loving thing to do to alter our behavior for the good of those who are more vulnerable or weaker than ourselves. And of course, we then have Jesus's command to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so these are some of the scriptures as well as others that I've been mulling on over the past few days. So what does this all mean for us? Now, whilst we are planning to allow congregational singing again on Sunday morning, because it is a core part of our faith and it's not just an add-on and something that can be done without, so we are going to be doing that. We're also beginning to be doing a number of different things. So we will continue, firstly, to run our booking system so that we can manage the numbers who are coming into St. Mary's. And when you arrive on a Sunday morning, members of our welcome team will sort of guide you and steward you to the places where you can sit so that we're able to manage the distribution of people in church. We're also going to have a section at the back of church and behind the font area that is reserved for those who would feel more comfortable sitting in socially distanced ways. You're near the door, there's greater ventilation, there's space there, and we want to acknowledge that there will be people who might value that. We will keep the rear door open to aid ventilation. Even though we're no longer required legally to wear a mask, I would ask you to consider still wearing one, again, for the good of those who may well be vulnerable, just as a part of our Christian witness and Christian duty in considering others better than ourselves, putting the needs of others before our own comfort. As a part of being good citizens, the government is asking us to do lateral flow tests at least twice a week. I would ask that you do one of those before you come to church on a Sunday. Now, we're not going to ask for proof of a negative test result. We're going to trust you and just ask that you would be diligent in that, again, as out of your care for others. We will continue to only take communion in one kind for the next few weeks, and we won't be returning to having after service refreshments just yet. So in some ways, apart from having congregational singing, it might well look and feel very similar to how things have been over the past few weeks. Now, everything is going to be reviewed, and unlike some leaders that we hear from on a regular basis in our country, if we need to change things, we'll change things. If I need to go back on some of the things that we've outlined here, do things differently again, then that's absolutely possible. We'll just keep reviewing things as a staff team and with the wardens and as a PCC as well. Now, one thing I do want to touch base on is the subject of vaccines. If you haven't had one yet, you've been offered it but haven't taken it up. If you haven't had one yet because of medical reasons, that's of course fine. But if not, then I would really urge you to consider having the vaccine for your own safety, for the safety of others in the congregation, and for the safety of our frontline doctors and nurses. Now, it's not my role as a rector to tell people what to do, and I am, of course, a pastor. I studied theology. I'm not a scientist. But as a church leader, I do have to come to a position on many different things in life. And so I've had to do quite a lot of just research, reading the papers on the ethics of the vaccine. And I've come to the conclusion that a Christian can, in all good faith and with a clear conscience, have the vaccine. And I have had both my jabs now as well. Now, this isn't the place in a midweek message to outline my thoughts as to why, but I have written a little paper that you can get from your church office if you are really interested in looking at my views on this subject. Now, as I come to an end of this midweek message, I just want to ask us all one question. Guys, do you believe what you believe? You know, the vaccine is good news. It may even be a gift from God to help protect us. But the vaccine is not where our faith is. And I've said on numerous occasions since AGM back in April that we need to recover the truth that God is sovereign over our lives, over your life, over the day that you were conceived, the day that you were born, the day that you will be called home. Nothing comes our way that is outside of God's will. And all our days are written in God's book already. So, please do take up the offer of a vaccine, but also let's not be a people who live in fear. Life is a risk. Driving into the village is a risk. Going on holiday is a risk. Sometimes I've heard even gardening is a risk. And as we move into this new phase, I'm reminded of what Oliver Cromwell once said. He said, trust God and keep your powder dry. We must trust in God's sovereignty over our lives at St. Mary's, but also remain wise. It's the classic both and. So as we return to church and do have sung worship, we have to both trust God and keep that booking system going. Offer some socially distanced seating. We're going to ask that you would consider wearing a mask. Ask that you would take a lateral flow test before coming on a Sunday. We're going to keep doing communion in one kind for a few more weeks and not have any post-service refreshments quite yet. And I acknowledge that some of you watching this will think I'm being far too cautious, whilst others will be thinking I'm not being cautious enough. And I just have to acknowledge that, and we're trying to find a way through this as a church family together. And we must, in all things, maintain our unity, not looking down on others for whatever decision we come to. As Hugh Greer was reminding us on Sunday at the group ministry service, God is with us, alongside us, close to us. He is sovereign over our lives. Let's not live in fear. Let us start to gather and worship together, whilst at the same time taking sensible precautions as we do that and keeping them all under review. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this message. May God bless you. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday. If you're around, do book in. And if you have any questions about any of this, please do telephone me. Bye for now.